All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest news and rumors all offseason long in Mets land. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel if you have not already for weekly episodes of our show that are now recorded live every Monday night, typically at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, such as this time right now. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live, as well as multiple videos throughout the week that we like to sprinkle along all off season long. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns. You feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. We're just going to star them throughout the show. We'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. And some may be saved for viewer questions at the end that are a little bit unrelated to some of the topics. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 112. Now, I feel like our show has now become quite the event every single week because there is a lot that needs to be unpacked week by week with the drama that we all know that is going on, is still hanging over our heads as someone continues to be unsigned, and we will continue to talk about it until we reach a resolution. But when it comes to the overall drama this week, of course, speaking of drama, my two co-hosts, always drama. I'm joking. But when it comes to, this entire week, wow, it has hit a different level of drama. Let's just say that. We will get into it. I feel like we all want to explode, but I want to say hi to my co-hosts first. Andrew, I'll start with you. How you feeling right now? Because this has reached a level that I don't think anybody really has expected it would reach a level. This is nuts.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's losing their mind, going crazy, picking sides like a civil war, and I'm just a fat kid in the background, eating snacks, just sitting back, waiting for this to end. Like I'm tired of wasting my energy, but again, I sit back. I will let everybody and their mother throw the pitchforks, light the bombs on fire, and I'm just sitting back here waiting for the conclusion because I've already been okay with is he here, is he not? Because at this point, I'm gonna trust the guy who's built the team. And if he doesn't think this fat tub of lard should be here, he's not going to be here. And I can move on to figure out those options. So let everyone go nuts, fight. I'm just going to sit back and wait for the conclusion and then react. Because at this point, we're all just wasting our energy being like, well, this is the right thing. No, this is the right thing. Like, until it happens, again, you got fans on both sides. I'm just sitting back, just enjoying the shit show.
And obviously, we're going to get into the events of FanFest that occurred, of course. But speaking of FanFest, Frank, Jeff McNeil wasn't there. What's that about?
He was afraid that maybe you were going to come after him, or maybe there were going to be some other, Fangraphs lovers that were going to be on there being like, oh, your advanced numbers, Jeff. Oh, you're not that good, Jeff. And he just didn't want to deal with it. He wanted to stay cordial, be a good guy.
Like 2 hours to tell him that? Come on. I live way a long way from Citi Field. Come on.
I don't know. I mean, it is possible. But listen, I mean, there were chants breaking out while guys were talking. So I think McNeil didn't want to, be a part of any of that. And there was people that want to trade him and things like that. So, McNeil wasn't there, but there was a lot of guys there. And listen, we got a lot more out of it than I thought we would. I didn't really know what to expect. And I was like, wait a minute, why is like the actual negotiations being talked about live right now for the world to hear? Now, real quick, my take on that is we talked about in the past, like when the show first started, like, did the Wilpons and Boris have a great relationship, and how does that relate to getting players? Because, you could say like, oh, these are Pete Alonso negotiations, but guess what? Just about every winter, you are going to be talking to Scott Boras if you are an owner because he represents so many players. And the Mets have gotten a few Boras clients over the past few years. They just got Juan Soto earlier this offseason. So like, oh, the relationship with Boras is pretty good. At this point, with Cohen making negotiations basically public, if I know Boras, he does not like that at all. So I don't know how that affects relationship of maybe future clients, but that's something for another time.
We'll see. Obviously, this has just become the day-to-day thing as to where Pete Alonso, the drama continues week to week, every single week, as he continues to be, out there on the market, not having the market that he expected. Of course, we'll get into Scott Boras. We'll get into everything that has been going on. But again, when it comes to, the look of it, we will talk about that, of what they just said publicly in a second. But I think that a lot of, emotions are kind of running high, and I really thought that it was bold to have FanFest with that type of elephant in the room. Personally, and we will get into it.
Or polar bear in that room.
With a big polar bear in that, or not in that room at this current moment. I think that it was very, very bold. But to be honest, I think that they thought Steve Cohen or anything that went on in that organization, I think they thought that this would be resolved by now. And to be honest, it was not resolved. They took some heat, and I personally think that they handled it well, and we will get into it. But when it comes to everybody here in the chat, I want to say hey to some of the viewers in here. Stanley coming in here as well. Ken, Daniel, Darren, Dan, all the D-word first names. Ramon as well coming in here. Our guy CP, one of our fellow Mets podcasters as well. He has been talking up about the Pete Alonso situation there. That's another great content creator to go out there too. He's very highly opinionated as well as us. Justin as well is in here. Another Daniel as well. We'll get into all of these discussions later on regarding everything that has been started in the chat. But welcome everybody to our show. Ricardo as well coming through as well. Truro coming in. We'll get into all of these comments, of course, because I feel like it's all just continuing to flow like this. But first, I want to start with Steve Cohen's comments, with David Stearns' comments. I did not expect it to be as amplified, Frank. I really do agree with you in that, because I didn't know if they were going to address this thing publicly. But when there's a massive, cloud floating over your head, as it is, with Pete Alonso being the homegrown guy that he is, meaning as much as he does to this organization for 6 years, probably even, longer than that, since he came into the organization in 2016 when he was drafted in the second round. I mean, again, when it comes to what have we been looking at so far in the Mets free agency, there's been a lot of fingers pointed. There's been a lot of anger. There has been a lot of sadness. There's been a lot of different types of emotions that have gone out in regards to Pete Alonso, and it all has really just stepped up and set things up the way that it has. And I feel like, you do have kind of two parties staring at each other with no other outlet to go, even though I do think there's other outlets, but we'll get into that later. But I do want to get into the comments that we did get from Steve Cohen from FanFest. Now, for those of you who don't know, on Sunday, there was FanFest at Citi Field for fans. There were current players there, former players there, personalities there for the Mets. I mean, everybody was there. And towards the end, you did get Gary Cohen to interview the big guys of the organization, Mendoza, Cohen, and Stearns. They all got interviewed live in front of Mets fans. And you were hearing a lot of Pete Alonso chants, a lot of "We Want Pete" chants. They tried to temper the situation, but it continued throughout that entire discussion. And towards the end there, Steve Cohen laid down the line and was very transparent with Mets fans. And I do want to get into these comments, but I think at this current moment, with how we're feeling, the truth hurts. I don't know what to tell you here. And as for Cohen talking about it after the Pete Alonso chants that he was getting from the crowd, he said, "This has been an exhausting conversation in negotiations. Soto was tough. This is worse. A lot of it is that we have made a significant offer. I don't like the structures that are being presented back to us. I think it's highly asymmetric against us, and I feel strongly about it. I will never say no. There's always the possibility, but the reality is we're moving forward and we're going to continue to bring in players. And as we continue to bring in players, the reality is that it's going to become harder to fit Pete into what is already a very expensive group of players that we already have. And that's where we are. I'm being brutally honest, just like we are on Mets Weekly. Hey, shout out to us. I don't like the negotiations. I don't like what is being presented to us. Listen, maybe that changes. Certainly, I'll always stay flexible, but if it stays this way, I think we will have to get used to the fact that we're going to have to go forward with the existing players that we have. Scott Boras, in response to that via the New York Times a few hours later, did talk about it, and he addressed it and said Pete's free agent contract structures requests are identical to standards and practices of other clubs who have signed similar situated qualifying offer / all-star level players. Nothing different, just established fairness standards. Now, we can unpack that as much as we can, but I do want to talk a little bit more about what we got from Steve Cohen here. Obviously, Scott Boras is going to respond to something as public as that, which, again, we can go into Scott Boras as much as we can. But from what we just heard from the owner, directly from him, you rarely see an owner be as transparent as he just was. And I have talked about this as my pet peeve many, many times with front offices. And everybody, I'm sure people remember me saying this over and over and over again on this show. My biggest pet peeve with sports front offices, I don't like to be lied to. I wasn't lied to here. He told me straight up. Andrew, I'll go to you first in regards to the comments that we got from Cohen. I don't even know where, to be honest, any direction you can bring this one in. I mean, this just keeps getting crazier and crazier and crazier. I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, the fire keeps on spreading farther and farther and farther. I've never seen this much drama ever for a guy's free agency. Ever.
Yeah, and for a guy who's not top 50 in Major League Baseball, all this crap. I mean, for a guy who's not the guy. Here's the point. I think this is what he said, because there was let's say a minority of fans saying, well, eventually Steve Cohen's going to step in and play the fan card. Well, Steve Cohen pretty much said that shit's not happening. So that to those fans that were holding on, thinking, that have been negative on Stearns, being like, well, Cohen's going to step in and get the job done. He didn't. He's not going to do that. He has pretty much outright told you, I'm letting David do his job, and that's it. Like, I'm not stepping involved. And again, with the Soto thing, he got taken. Like, let's be honest, the Soto thing, he did get taken advantage. Almost $800 million. He's setting the example that that's not happening. Yes, for a generational talent, yeah, we'll go to maybe
1%, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. If am I going to do a little more glazing when I have to? Yeah. So, and this is also kind of a get bag to say, oh no, that's not happening every time, Scott. Like, you win, and then this is Cohen plus Stearns being like, yeah, we can be friends, but I'm not just going to be your, oh, here's my big cash cow. That's not happening. The Mets are setting their price, and Cohen is letting David do his job. Like, we talked Cohen, that was all mostly Soto. For other things, he's letting Stearns do his job. And if he's got a number that he thinks he's worth, they're not going under there. And you're not going to have that knight in shining armor that some Mets fans had of Cohen's going to do it. Cohen knows what the fans want. And he's going to see the fans being all pissed off that Pete Alonso. Yeah, guys, that's not happening. So, and the fact, again, it was so refreshing because we saw Bob Nutting. All these teams are having their fan fest this week. And the Cubs owner being like, well, I'm just trying to cut it profit. Like, you're seeing, this is like the only owner that's at one of these fan fests that's just outright just saying what needs to be said and honest, not like, well, we're going to do our best, and if it happens, it happens. Like, no, he's saying like, hey, I want to get it done. An offer's been made. It's the others, and also it puts some pressure on that other side, being like, hey, we've put an offer out. We're not doing that stupid Prince Fielder deal that you idiots want. That's not happening. We've put an offer. We're not bidding against yourselves. While also, hey, Pete, this isn't the 90s when Frank was in Prime's Frank life where there's not social media. Everybody knows everything. And it doesn't take an idiot to go onto a computer and say, man, there's really no actual interest in Pete Alonso. So now it's to the point of maybe you're turning Pete Alonso heel a little bit, being like, the Mets are putting their offer. They put a decent offer. Pete, you don't want to come back? He doesn't give a shit about the orange and blue glasses, but like he's kind of not playing it like, oh, Pete doesn't care about his number in the rafters or breaking Darryl Strawberry's record. That means jack shit, but to some people it does.
Yeah.
They're making it pretty much proven to kind of get them, I'm not saying in the good graces, but kind of put some heat on Alonso, say, hey, we're doing it. We've offered. What other team? Like, we maybe heard the Blue Jays have an offer, but it's not that good because he's not taking it. So to the point of, we've put the best offer on the table and now taking it off the table because we don't want to use that as leverage against Toronto, and they're playing this right. So it was amazing how how Cohen did it, and especially how he did it, where he could have made it, put his foot in the mouth to an extent if he would have done this improper, but he took it the best way he possibly could. And again, and it's kind of funny that at the beginning of that press conference, you got people booing him, chanting that we want Pete. And if I can quote Star Wars a little bit, by the end of it, like how he pretty much tells you, Pete Alonso's probably not here, and it got caused to thunderous applause by the end of it. And see, that's the problem. So fans are going to be fans and want your jerseys and all that, but he's not going to be that saving of, Cohen's going to be big money. He's not. So, and he's letting Stearns doing his job, and he did a good job.
Yeah, I cannot agree more as to how they are really looking at this. And listen, I understand, the attachment. It makes sense, obviously. If you are, a fan of this team, there is an emotional attachment here. I understand it. But again, you can't use the emotional attachment in that way to make these business type of decisions. Now, I'm just going to make an assumption here, and I'll bring it right to you, Frank. We are always brutally honest here. We always we say things straight up. We don't sugarcoat it. We don't tell you what you want to hear. We tell you what you need to hear or what we think you need to hear. At this current moment, and for those of you who are in denial about it, that's fine, because I understand, given the situation. But I will tell you right now, out of what I am hearing at the pace that this is going, Frank, I think Pete Alonso's gone. I think that's it. I don't think he's coming back now. Like at this moment, I mean, maybe things can change because it's been a wild ride, but I think Pete Alonso's gone. I don't think he comes back now. I really don't. And it's nothing of his point of view, but there's a line in the sand now, which I'm 100% in agreement with. Obviously, we talked about it. I think that's it.
Yeah, and Cohen basically said the same thing you're saying. I mean, he basically said the words like, you know what, we're bringing in other people now, and, this is a group of already expensive players. And he's saying that something needs to change from the other side in the Boris and Alonso camp in order for a deal to get done. Because what he is saying is that what is being asked right now of us, we are not going to do. So the Mets have already said that we are not giving in to what they're asking for. So they need to come up with something else. And like we've said, and Andrew just made the point, like go on the computer and look it up. But until another team does that, well, why should the Mets give in to that offer that Boris wants? Because other teams have not given that. So why should the Mets? And that's been our point for a majority of this offseason is, don't bid against yourself, don't outbid yourself. Don't overpay when you don't necessarily have to. And you know what? The other teams that could potentially be interested are known for dumb overpays. So if that's what they're going to do, then do it. And they will continue to, unfortunately, not win World Series. I mean, the Angels are not going to win next year, and the Blue Jays are not going to win next year either, or the year after that. So, you know what? That's just the kind of situation that they're in. It's like, you know what? Stearns is running this team now. He has a playoff pedigree of being in the postseason every year. Mets were in the NLCS this year, and the Angels and Blue Jays, or whatever team gets Pete, if it's those two teams, they're not going to the championship series no matter what league they're in. So, you know what? They have shown you, like, this is just not how you build baseball teams. And I find it so interesting. Like, the thing that probably stood out the most to me is that Cohen said the negotiations are worse than the Soto negotiations. Because everybody could agree on this.
1 second, Frank.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How much did Juan Soto end up getting?
Oh, he got quite a bit. And here's the thing. This is the thing that's very interesting. So we got the 700.
Worse?
Yeah. He got $765 million and potentially $800 million depending on how things end up going. And it sounds like that's kind of what Boris wants to do again, where it's like if he opts out or if he doesn't opt out, then he gets more money. Like if they kind of hurt themselves a little bit by giving that to Soto, and now Boris wants to use that excuse like, oh, it's just previous free agent negotiation tactics. It's nothing new. Well, it's like, listen, P. Alonso, as much as he's done for this organization, for this franchise, a lot of people love him. He's not Juan Soto. He just isn't. No. I mean, you could look at a bunch of different numbers and it'll tell you that. So he doesn't get the special contract that Juan Soto got. But one of the things that we said when Soto signed it was, this is a crazy deal when you think of all the different stipulations that are in there. And in order for a negotiation process, how do you come up with that result? When we were like, oh, and his family gets all this stuff, and if he opts out, if he doesn't opt out, he gets that. Like, there were just like so many different little things that would take a while negotiating in order to come up with that. So to then say that these Alonso negotiations are worse, that tells me that this must be a really, really crazy situation, because we all agreed that Juan Soto is an overpay. Like, it's a massive overpay.
Of course.
And we know it. And we know it. And Steve Cohen still did it. But he's saying, so even with him doing that, he's still saying that this Pete Alonso thing, I don't like it and I'm not going to do it. Like, that, what it tells me is that the offer they're asked for has to be so insane that for even Cohen to be like, no, there's something going on there. Because if it was just Stearns, I could see people being like, oh, it's just Stearns being cheap and small market mindset and this stuff. But when Cohen's the one saying no, something's up.
Yeah. No. I'll tell you how insane this is. Now, roughly, okay, this is just rough estimate, okay? When it comes to Stearns being cheap, okay, if the Mets were to end up giving him $30 million a year, which is probably what they're asking. I don't know if that's official, so who knows? If, let's say, they were to give Alonso $30 million a year, they're currently in, that would eventually put them in the third luxury tax threshold, which is about, I guess, like 77 million over the surcharge space. And then it's also plus 20 million, which is the starter point of it. So that means that it would be 60% of that contract would be the including tax. 30 million a year. 60% of that is 18 million. 18 million plus 30 million a year, $48 million a year. Andrew, with nobody bidding against you, is Pete Alonso worth $48 million a year?
I don't think we have enough time for me to say how many more things are worth more, or that, no, not a shot in hell is Pete Alonso worth $48 million. And again, Pete Alonso is going to hit 40 homers. We need a guy that hits 40 homers, right? So, I mean, it's $48 million. Steve Cohen's got all this money, so who cares?
Yeah, I know, right? He has no money whatsoever. And to be honest, I did the calculation here of what a $30 million AAV would mean for Pete Alonso. Your payroll plus tax most likely will be like $480 million if they were to do that, around there. I mean, that is an insane number for a one-tool first baseman. And listen, we're not talking about this as Pete Alonso hate. This isn't hate. This is the reality of the situation. We're not slandering him. We know what he has done for this team. But again, when you talk about the construction of this roster, there's two different things which I have kind of configured over this last week. There's two different things that I feel like a lot of Mets fans are kind of confusing as one. With the Mets' current situation, if you look at this lineup, technically, they replaced Pete Alonso with Juan Soto, which I think we all can agree is an upgrade. If you don't think it's an upgrade, have your head examined, please, and get back to me. So right now, the Mets replaced the Pete Alonso production and then some to an elite level. So now all you have to do is fill in first base. Two different things. Replacing Pete Alonso's production and filling in first base. And we will get into some of those first base possibilities as well. And also, you happen to have somebody named Mark Vientos who broke out last year. So again, the production in the lineup, it's a better lineup overall. It still is a better lineup overall. Still, there are some flaws to it. I get it. But when you're talking about replacing the production that Pete gave you, you already did that with Juan Soto. So, how do you approach that? Maybe you take a flyer on a first baseman, such as somebody that we're going to talk about later. Maybe you trade for somebody that's a rental. You trade for somebody with 2 years of control. And then you move Mark Vientos to third base. So then you would have some complementary power from first base. You'd have Juan Soto's production. You'd have Francisco Lindor. You'd have Mark Vientos. I think that's what is really just seen as to where Mets fans are like, oh, well, we don't have a first baseman. It has to be Pete. Nope, it doesn't have to be Pete because you just replaced Pete's production with Juan Soto. To be honest, Juan Soto actually hits better when he doesn't have anybody behind him. We'd love to have somebody behind him to make the lineup deeper. But to be honest, I really have, in my head recently, I really have grown to the fact of where maybe this lineup doesn't really need Pete Alonso as much as people think they do. Maybe they just need him in this lineup to look like a good team on paper. And World Series are not won with teams on paper. So that's kind of how I see it into the way where, like, okay, you know what? I'm okay letting him go now. And I've talked about it already. I've said it. I'm okay with doing it. You know, I'm good with him. I'm good without him. But again, if people think that he's being underpaid, if you think that he's being lowballed, should have played better last year. Should have played better in 2024. I don't even know what to say at this point. I mean, at this point, I'll tell you right now, from what we saw from Steve Cohen and David Stearns this weekend, like I said, I don't like to be lied to. I wasn't lied to. Even though David Stearns has not lied once in his entire tenure, as compared to other guys like Billy Epler or Zach Scott or other guys like that, where they try to sell you on a bill of goods. They didn't lie to you. They were transparent. They told you what has been going on. They probably shouldn't have done it, to be honest, because it's kind of a little bit of breach of the private negotiations. But when it got that crazy, you had that elephant in the room, they addressed it. And what was really, really funny to me was Stearns talks about it, and I think Andrew mentioned this. Stearns talks about it, about, we love Pete. He has every right to go out there and look what is there for him on the market. But then he gets to, we have some young players and we have this and that. Completely gets booed. Cohen piggybacks on that, agrees with him. After that, yay! say, take my baby. Like, literally, it's insane. Cohen is apparently the Mets fan, right? He's the Mets fan, the longtime owner. He's the savior of the franchise. Stearns is the new guy in town, even though he got you to the Game 6 of the National League Championship Series when everybody said his team sucked, but whatever. Does it have to just come from Steve Cohen's mouth for people to just stop? And I'll tell you right now, after what I just heard, even though it probably is unprecedented and it shouldn't have happened that way and it shouldn't have gotten to this level, when it comes to, what I just heard, and how everybody is on the same page in this front office. Steve Cohen, David Stearns, I'm sure Carlos Mendoza feels some way. The Mets are the most stable organization they're the most stable they are the most stable I've ever seen the organization ever. I have never been more proud of a Mets front office in my life. Doesn't say much, I know, because we've had a lot of hectic craziness. But I'll tell you right now, that transparency, that honesty, the brutal honesty, what more can you ask for? Whether it is what you want to hear or not. I think that's pretty much, Frank, if you want to add anything in regards to this, because it's just like, I don't know what to say anymore. Like, it's already been put out that, like, why would the Mets bid against themselves? And even if they do bid against themselves, like I said, $48 million a year, would you say that he's worth that? And no? Okay.
Nowhere close to that.
Nowhere close to that. And to be honest, it probably would be lower in tax if this got done
it'd be like half
on.
that. It's like half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of what they offered him. We said it was like around 25-ish a year or so. Yeah. Like, again, like
it's already dipping into an overpay. So if it's like 23 million dollars a year, that would be 36.8 million that he would be worth with the tax. So still a lot. But again, what's 5 million more? Cohen's loaded. You gonna give $48 million to a you're gonna give $48 million a year to a 30-year-old first baseman? You're insane. You're insane. If you actually do agree with that, you're insane. And that's the type of things that get you tied up. That does not make you the Dodgers. You know what that makes you? The Angels. That makes you the Angels.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, too, is not just that he's a 30-year-old first baseman, but when we talk about the reality of the situation, this is now 2 years in a row where he has not been his 2022 self. So just generally speaking, this could go for any player. Guy hits that 30-year-old mark, and you say to yourself, okay, well, things might start to decline a little bit. You've already seen a decline. Yeah, and same thing, too. I mean, it's different when it's a first baseman, like you said, a one-tool player. It just doesn't have that same value. So, and the Mets are looking at it that way. But like we've said all along, I agree with your point of like, oh, well, you replace Soto with Pete, you have Vientos, you have some other guys, but it's like we keep coming back to, it just can't be Brett Beatty, though. It just can't be like,
no, it can't.
Because basically what it turns into is you turned Alonso into Soto, but then you basically turned Marte into Beatty. So it's like you basically like upgraded in one area and then went down in another area, but still, and
like they need to address it. They do.
But I mean, I someone made a good point. I want to say it was Darren. Like, Pete has like all the stuff that he's done for organization. Make playoffs, record, clubhouse, all the stuff. Great, but the Mets missed their opportunity if they didn't want to keep Pete. Like, if the negotiations were this far off to begin with, the Mets should have set that deadline way earlier of, if you guys do not change this, we are moving on, when there were a bunch of other options available. Because now we find ourselves in a situation where it's a bunch of guys that nobody really wants. So if you want to replace Alonso, you have to get a less desirable option.
They already did. And that's what I'm saying. They already did. They replaced his production. They replaced his production.
But no, but so now, okay, you did that, but now, but if you want to get rid of Beatty, you want to take Beatty out of the equation.
Now you need to fill the first base position. Yeah,
but they
will get into somebody who could possibly do that, or other guys that could possibly do that. I know that the name on there has not been great, but again, there's other options out there as to what they can do, and I've kind of opened my mind to that, and I kind of am convinced that they could do something like that with Juan Soto here. If Juan Soto wasn't here and they lost Pete,
then I mean,
thing.
Yeah, then we have a big issue.
Not to mention, you also have somebody else that can be at first base, being Mark Vientos, possibly coming off of a breakout year. So again, when it comes to the production of Pete Alonso, they replaced that already. It may not seem like it because it's not position for position, but right now they just need a bat that can play first base. They don't need just Pete Alonso in general to bring him back there.
Exactly. So they still need another corner infielder is basically what it comes down to. But they've missed the opportunity to get quite a few as far as like more traditional guys, because now you're looking at, like we said, moving Vientos to first and getting a third baseman, or getting first baseman that are not coming off of great seasons. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Yeah. You want to look at the trade market. You could look at the trade market, but like we've said, Stearns has been stingy in the trade market too. I mean, he has not been willing to part with the prices it takes to make off big trades. So that's another thing to consider as well. We always say that when it comes to the Mets, their resources are much better financially than they are prospect-wise. So if you were going to get another big-time infielder, it would have been via free agency, not through trade. So since they haven't done trade and there aren't many free agent options left to pivot to, if you say, you know what, Alonso, we are moving on, I feel like they could have made that decision earlier. And there would have been an easier way to pull this off. Whereas now I feel like we're kind of scrounging around. Like it just becomes tougher to do it.
That's what I said earlier. Like what I said, it was like, well, I think they expected this to go a little bit faster than it did. And it's gone to that extreme as to where, everyone's scrambling in this way. I think that the trade market, again, we have talked about it from the premier position of first base. It's not going to cost the entire farm system to trade for a first baseman because of the value to that position. It's a lot different to whether you're talking about a third baseman or whatever. And to be honest, if they were to trade for a third baseman, such as somebody like Nolan Arenado, that would be fine too, right? I mean, that would be fine too. That would fill that in. We would love to take Brett Baty out of the opening day equation, 100%. Even if it becomes a situation where Brett Baty is the opening day for third baseman, I don't think it's going to be set in stone that way. There's going to be a short leash. They're going to remain flexible. And maybe if they're all in or whatever, they can make a move like that at the trade deadline. Because they can either add a third or first baseman with Vientos here, and they can complete the lineup. And that third or first baseman doesn't need to be Pete Alonso. It doesn't need to be Alex Bregman, who we saw reports this week that they are completely out of it, which I'm happy with. I know, good player. Why don't you want a good player? But we've said our piece on that. Again, when it comes to Baty, we already know our thoughts on that. But when it comes to, the look of the roster, they need a corner infielder. Wherever it comes from, it's probably going to have to be external. And we'll see where they pivot in that regard. I don't know what it's going to be. I feel like they're going to try with, worst case scenario, it might end up being Baty. Who knows? I think that they're remaining flexible. They're remaining opportunistic with a guy in the corner infield. And we will talk about one guy that they have been attached to this week. And I feel like that's the best way to kind of move forward in that way. I feel like if you're stacking up a lineup of the best positions, you want, looking at it from an all-star team, you're not going to get everybody. We've talked about it. But I feel like looking at it from the Pete Alonso stance, that's also probably trying to just have an all-star team for a position that is not warranted $30 million a year. Not to mention also when it comes to Pete Alonso, what they have offered, I think, is more than he is worth at this current moment on this market. And again, you can tell me everything that he has done for this team. That's not how free agency works. It's a what have you done for me lately? Santander is the exact same age, different position, but the exact same age as Pete Alonso. He got a 5-year deal. Of course, Toronto's not very, very smart. We get it. But he came off of a career year. So that was what his market looked like. When it comes to Pete, he didn't. Wasn't good last year. But Pete Alonso's not the exception to everything. Juan Soto, that guy's the exception. He's in the top 1% with Ohtani and Judge and, all of these superstar players. That's what Juan Soto is. Different situation. Pete Alonso isn't. Pete Alonso is not. And it's not us saying that we hate Pete Alonso. We want him gone. He's an awful person. He's terrible. Again, we're sitting at a standstill because why would we have to not? Because when it comes to the negotiations, who's our competition? Who is our competition? The Blue Jays and the Angels? I'm so scared. So scary. Very, very scary. And to be honest, if he ends up going there, whatever. And to be honest, it doesn't even look like he is going to end up going there. And this is based off of rumors, actually, so I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, when it comes to the Blue Jays, there was a podcaster who came out and said this. I don't know if this is confirmed. I am not saying it is true, but this is a talking point in that way. Dave Schwartz of the Early Game podcast, he's posted something about 7 hours ago on Twitter saying that he heard that Scott Boras had a deal with the Blue Jays that Pete Alonso said no to. And he also went on to say in this clip that he has on Twitter saying that he does not want to be a Blue Jay. He wants to be in New York. And he's frustrated that these talks are not progressing with the Mets. So we also had another report as well, which Ken Rosenthal did say, that it's pretty common. But in this situation where the market is nothing right now, it's basically you go to the Mets or you're not playing at all. We had Evan Roberts on WFAN say that Scott Boras is apparently presenting contracts where Pete Alonso, if he opts out, the Mets will owe him additional bonus pool money, which again, an opt-out number is like very common in that regard, of course. But it seems like from what we're hearing, these are just rumors, okay? These are just rumors. I'm not confirming that they are true. But from that assumption right there, it seems like Pete Alonso, he wants to be a Met, and he also wants the top dollar. Pete, looking at this market, you can't have both. You can't have both. Andrew, what do you think about that as a possibility of, these stipulations in the contracts? Because Cohen did say, I do not like these conditions. It can't just be the AAV. There's probably something else in there that he doesn't like. And I feel like Cohen would be willing to announce that to the world after what we saw this week. But again, negotiating in good faith. He said Soto was tough. This is worse. So who knows if it's true? Again, I'm not saying it's true, but there could be something here where it's like, Pete, you have no other suitors.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the buyout for the opt-out, I mean, I guess we did see this with the Soto thing. Everyone's, like, losing their mind, like, "Oh, we've never seen," like, we kinda did see this with Soto, where it's like the Mets can raise it to $5 million. But again, it's weird. I mean, the fact again, the rumor of like, "Well, he does anyone actually want to go to Toronto?" Again, here's another podcast me shitting on Toronto. I mean, their best player is a pending UFA that in a year from now could be playing for us, and you're stuck eating Canadian bacon with Anthony Santander, Will Wagner, and Dalton Varsho. No, he's a free agent too. He could be gone too. So yeah, there's no reason. Yes, their pitching is solid, but again, another year older, and there's nobody coming in their farm system. Nobody wants to go to Toronto unless it involves hockey, and even then, they don't really want to go. So I can understand it. Again, why you want to go to a last place team? I mean, if money is the only thing you care about, they're literally giving it to you. But again, maybe there is it. But again, it's all horseshit until that pass and notification comes in.
Yeah, of course.
But it's like, I can understand it. Again, nobody wants to go to Toronto. Like, you're telling me, would I rather have $5 or go play for the Blue Jays? I'll take the $5 because at least I know that's stable. I don't know what the hell that place is going to be in a year
You'll
from
have
now.
to pay taxes on that $5.
And you got to pay
$5
and exactly
anyway. Yeah,
got to pay taxes. Got to get all this stuff just to go, and then they don't even want to pay their players.
Apologies to our Canadian viewers.
We ain't got no candidate. Nobody can. They all watching hockey. But again, like even still, like I talked about a couple weeks ago, like the Donaldson and Martin, they just won their lawsuit. They're finally getting paid. They weren't getting paid in Toronto. So it's like it's to the point of nobody wants to go there. And this isn't like 4 years ago when they had all those young stud bats and Teoscar Hernandez, and when they actually had a good lineup with Lourdes and obviously Vlad and them, where there was promise. Now it's just, well, you want to go finish in fourth place behind an rapidly improving Red Sox teams. You still got to deal with the Yankees. Baltimore has got their generic white dudes. They're at least going to be decent. And then maybe you're better than Tampa. Yeah. Like, if winning is a priority, then there is one option. But again, if he's chasing the bag, let him chase the bag. But even still, maybe the Blue Jays aren't even getting to what the Mets offered. Then that's the different conversation. Like, they just paid
Santander. Another thing. That is another thing.
And they just paid Santander. Like, they paid Santander. They deferred most of that contract. So really, like, it's not high AAV.
And there was talks about the Mets offer having deferred money
as well. So
and maybe that's probably just what he doesn't want. And that's the main reason as to why they put it out there, because of, the surcharge with the luxury tax and things like that. They don't want that going to a first baseman. It's completely understandable. Like I said, if it was $30 million a year, it would be $48 million a year with the luxury tax. If you're going to pay that to a first baseman, again, you're insane. Vladdy ain't going to even be getting that on the market. But anyways, speaking of the Blue Jays offer, I'm not confirming that this was it, okay? But I'm just putting up the hypotheticals because, not only Justin Herbert can't be the only if man. Anyways, Michael Kay said on his show that the Blue Jays offer was $375. I don't know if that's true, but let's say if it was, I'd probably be willing to match that. Maybe. If it's $375, that's all that gets it going compared to $370. And we saw that the Mets were willing to go a little bit higher from that report from Will Salmon. Maybe. But it seems like the gap is a little bit more deferred money. And it makes sense because let's say if you're giving $18 million to Pete, it really more is, plus 60% of that in luxury tax. So when it comes to the look of that, let's say it's still getting steep in that way, but that's $25 million a year times 60% of that. That would be 15. So that would still be $40 million a year for Pete. In luxury tax sense, again. Again, 3 years, $70 million to 3 years, $75 million. Would you guys be willing to match that? Frank? I mean, sure, right? If that's what gets it done.
It's a fair deal. I mean, it's not. I mean, what did we say? We thought the Mets offer was $370, and at that point, it's like, and that's why I don't know if I believe the $370 offer. I don't know if I believe the Michael K offer because the one that I believe, the one I do believe is what Cohen said. It just must be something crazy. So that's kind of where I'm at. That like of all the rumors we've heard, that's the one I believe the most because I heard it directly from a top source who is actually in the negotiation room, not like a spokesperson for other people in the room. So like that's the one that I believe the most.
Yeah, it's possible, and maybe it's like 390. Maybe it is 4,100. Who knows? Like I don't know what that would be, but again, the Mets have made it and said we're drawing the line in the sand here. We can draw the line in the sand because we have no other competitors. Again, Toronto, the Los Angeles Angels. That's supposed to intimidate me. That is supposed to intimidate me. And again, if he ends up getting more money from them, good for him. But again, where is that offer? That's the thing of Mets fans getting all worried. They're saying, but what if he gets a better offer somewhere else? He's going to leave. He's gone. Where is it? Where is it? Where's that offer? Because once we see that offer, then you can tell me, let's see if you want to match this. And if it's not as outrageous, they probably would end up doing it. So all of this, well, he could go to Toronto. He could go to the Angels. Those two teams have been incompetent for the last 10 years. That's supposed to scare me? So if the Angels think it is okay to give him $120 million over 5 years, I should have said, oh, how could we not do that? Like Dan says right here, the Angels are the king of terrible contracts. Trout, Rendon, Josh Hamilton, Pujols, $21 million to Syndergaard, $11 million to Harvey when they were washed. So I'm supposed to take the Angels' word for it. I'm supposed to take the Blue Jays' word for it. Two teams that have not been irrelevant, that have not been relevant since the beginning of the 2000s. No disrespect to fans of those teams, but we know the reality of the situation. Again, it's like, why would we bid against ourselves? Because there's nothing else to bid against. What is there to bid against? And if there was something to bid against, he'd be gone already. He's still available. He's still out there. Unless he signed while we're recording this. Did he sign? No? Okay. Just saying. The Angels will give Pete 8 years, $240 million. And if they do that, have fun. Not to mention, we almost did something that stupid, and he turned it down. Remember, 7 years, $158 million? Something that he turned down before he hired Scott Boras, who's holding everything up. He's the problem. Pete, you made this decision to hire him. So again, he wants to be a Met. He wants to be paid like, Prince Fielder, wants to be paid like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., paid like Freddie Freeman. You can't have both, Pete. You know why he can't have both? Because he didn't play well in 2024. Yeah? Right? All right, let's get into the comments here, and then we will move on to moving on from Pete. Truro coming in here saying that if he was never there, if he was never a Met, there would be no drama. A majority of fans probably wouldn't want him, myself included. It's possible, and we talked about it. He's been here for 6 years. He's a homegrown talent, and that's the attachment that fans have. And I do think that, like, kind of pushing it aside that you got Juan Soto is insane. But again, Pete Alonso, he's a Met. He's been a Met his entire career. So again, you never know. We will get into Stearns' plan B, but Explosive saying Stearns failed at not having a plan B. I think he's talking about free agents on the market, which Frank touched on, saying we should have never got to this point at the end of January. Stearns should have had a deadline and had Pete replacement a month ago. And that's the kind of the balance that you do have with a dilemma here is, they did as much due diligence as they could with Pete Alonso. And Pete Alonso being the homegrown guy that he is, they tried. They tried as much as they could, but there had to be a price limit there. So while everybody else was signing first baseman, what exactly could they do, right? But I do think that there could be a pivot on the trade market. We will talk about that in a second. But again, I understand the concern. And I get that, there is, a little bit of a, hold back here with losing Pete Alonso. But like Truro just said, if he wasn't a Met, this would be a lot different of a situation. So you just never know. But Dan says that Toronto is going to give Pete what he's demanding. They're desperate for players to come there. Where's the offer? Would have been done already, right? The latest, and I'm not saying that to just, say, Pete Alonso, show me the money here. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we've already gotten reports recently that nothing is close with Toronto or Los Angeles with Pete Alonso. So again, if he does have a better offer, where is it? Where's the offer? And Darren coming in saying, Dan, you're probably right. The Angels owner hates Cohen, and just to spite Cohen, he might be dumb enough to overpay. That could happen. That could happen. It could happen. But again, there's parts of this Mets operating these payrolls of guys that are tied in for next year, where it's not worth to bring 60% of that salary to Pete Alonso after the year that he just had. Dan also coming in here saying Epler gave Marte, McNeil, and Nimmo bad contracts, like a wasted $60 million. I hate to say that, Nimmo, but Teo is only $2 million more. Think about it. Yeah, of course. That's another thing you can look at. The AAV with Nimmo for his overall value is a steal, in my opinion, but the term is a lot. We know it is, especially with the concerns that we've had with his health these last few years. So you just never know. But when it comes to the overall look of the market, I do think that it's like, okay, you can look at this without Pete now. You can look at it without Pete. And to be honest, if you wanted Pete Alonso, especially when you have all these young guys that could fill in the part and you have Juan Soto, all you can do, to be honest, in this situation is invent a time machine. Because again, like Dan said right here, let's say Marte and McNeil aren't on the books. Would you be willing to go up a little bit more for Alonso? Maybe. You never know. Who gave Marte and McNeil those contracts? And Nimmo, too. Is that Stearns' fault? And I even made this joke on Twitter, I think yesterday or the day before, because it seems like everybody wants to blame Stearns for every single situation. I mean, I can't believe that Stearns traded away Tom Seaver in 1977. What a dick. Frank, you were there for that. Can you believe it? What an awful human being David Stearns can be.
Stearns made.
I mean, literally, he really fumbled the bag on that one. I mean, I can't believe he did that. Unreal. Now, speaking of other moves that could possibly be in line for the Mets with this lineup. There was a little snippet that came from Pat Ragazzo, and that being Spencer Torkelson, as the Mets are interested in possibly trading for him. Now, this would be a buy low, obviously, considering the year that he just had. But we all know that the Mets are going to have to somewhat pivot. We all agree that Brett Baty should not be in this opening day lineup. And even if he is, they probably will find a way to somewhat operate with that, because we've seen Stearns move around things during the season and configure the roster. But you never know. But when it comes to the look of it, the Mets with the possibility of trading for Spencer Torkelson, in this way, they would be pivoting with more torque. Andrew? No? Huh? That's no?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, come on. It's good. You can't tell me it's not good. Anyways, so obviously the report from Pat Ragazzo, like I said, the Mets are considering a trade for Tigers first baseman Spencer Torkelson. For those of you who don't know who Spencer Torkelson is, he was the number 1 overall pick in the 2020 MLB draft. He's really struggled at the major league level to gain that consistency. The upside is still there. In little spurts, we have seen the potential that he does have. But overall, he has not given you the best. Let's just say that. The overall, tool grades that you got from him on draft day, he was a 60-hit tool, 70 power, 4 running. His arm is 50 in the field, which I would say that overall in those tools, it seems like he has showed those so far at the major leagues. But when you look at it from last year, it was a disaster for him. And for a majority of the season, he was in AAA. He slashed 219, 295, 374. He had 10 home runs, 37 runs batted in, 92 weighted runs created plus, at only 381 plate appearances at the major league level. Now, one of the redeeming parts of his 2024, he did post a 125 weighted runs created plus. That is 25% over the league average in offensive production since he was recalled from August 17th. Still not at the level that you expect from a guy like Spencer Torkelson, but overall, he did finish the season strong. Average to maybe slightly below average percentiles in exit velocity, hard hit rate. His quality of contact was not great. He does not chase that much, 84th percentile in the chase rate. Lots of swings and misses, though. It seemed like he was unable to make a consistent amount of contact. And, he was in AAA for 275 plate appearances. He's 25 years old. He would have control through 2028. It was not a good year for Spencer Torkelson last year. But for absolute upside, just strictly upside, could the Mets swing a trade for him? Maybe. It's possible. But Andrew, I know that you're a big prospect guy. You know about Spencer Torkelson pretty well. It's been rough for him. Could it be a change of scenery thing that he needs? Would this be something that you would consider, or would you consider other options?
I mean, it's an interesting idea because, again, this is, a former number 1 overall pick that was hyped and has all the major records at his school and college. He's slaughtered throughout the minor league system, and then again, it's just he can't find his footing in the big leagues. And again, that's problems with young players. Yes, we get blessed with Sotos and Acuñas and juniors and guys like that. Not everybody comes right away in his second year of their major league career hitting an MVP conversation. So again, he's like most young players. He just hasn't been able to get his footing in the big leagues. The Tigers also, again, kind of positionally squeezing him out. I mean, they have Cole Keith. They obviously bring in Gleyber Torres, Jace Young, Trey Sweeney, who was brought over, obviously, with Javi Baez still sitting there probably on the bench. But you saw them be the surprise team in the second half to make a playoff run with that young infield. So, and Torque was kind of a piece of that, but not really. And then they bring in Gleyber Torres offseason. So it's to a point that does he really fit, especially if Kerry Carpenter is going to be their DH? I mean, you can maybe make a platoon there, but you also got like Andy Ibanez, who maybe that's their platoon with Kerry Carpenter against left-handed pitching. So if you're telling me you're getting a guy with tons of team control, and even it's another, and I know this is not what fans want to hear, but if Stearns' plan is to have a conglomeration of a Mark Vientos, Brett Beatty, let's say you add a guy like we talked about last year, maybe Paul DeYoung, Yoel Moncada, and find a guy. Or if it's Spencer Torkelson, can you get a league average hitter to the All-Star break? That probably is what his plan is. Can a conglomeration of that give you a 700 OPS and some production? Maybe that's the plan. Maybe not. Maybe there's a massive trade. But if you're telling me I can add Spencer Torkelson, put him at first base, I can keep Mark Vientos for now at third base, because I think once you shift Mark to first, there really is no going back. You could say, if Vlad Guerrero's different next year, maybe. But I think once you move him to first, you shouldn't be moving him back. So if you're telling me it keeps Vientos at third, who maybe can get another year of development at third base, and you give me a flyer with a guy like Spencer Torkelson, and even if you bring him in, it doesn't necessarily take you out of that class next year, first baseman. Yes, if he comes over and hits and you see that number one pick, hell, you got him for 4 years making nothing. If he sucks, it's not going to stop you from going if you want Vlad Guerrero Jr. next year. It's just another upside play. What David Stearns has done all upside in the rotation, and he really hasn't done it with the bats. He's been obviously more run prevention when you've seen the bats. You've added in, obviously, Juan Soto. That's pretty good high upside run prevention in the batter's box compared to the defensive side. So it's an interesting idea. Run production, not run prevention. I mean, I love it. If, again, the price to acquire, I know I've seen it all over the place. Oh, it's a Brett Beatty. It is a Brett Beatty, same situation. I don't think it's a flip for Brett Beatty 1-for-1, because, again, if they're already punching out a corner infield, why would they want another corner infield? I think this is probably in a comp that I kind of threw together while you were yapping. Maybe it's a Blade Tidwell, and then you maybe get one of their relievers for Torque and a reliever for a Blade Tidwell, something like that. Because their pitching factory, yes, they have Schoolball, they have Jackson Jobe. That's the kind of like mid-teen prospect for them. I don't think, again, Beatty. They don't need Beatty. They have their Beatties, Jace Jungs, and obviously they brought in Gleyber Torres. They got Trey Sweeney. They had Cole Keith now playing first base, which I don't love. Like, I'd rather just have Torque at first base and use Keith as a versatile switch utility piece, but they want to give that guy first base, sure. So I don't think they're going to be, give me Brett Beatty. I just think you can obviously trade Beatty and a different thing. But again, if you're getting me another upside piece that shouldn't call, again, Blade Tidwell, we've kind of, his up and down. We still think he can be a back-end starter. But again, are you willing to make the risk for a potential back-end starter for a guy that could potentially has hit 30 home runs in the major leagues? And you look at his baseball savant page, he would have hit 37 home runs at Citi Field compared to his 31 he hit in Comerica. So you take that guy out of the cavernous Comerica. I'm not saying, again, he didn't have a great year, but that could also help a psyche. Another thing, I guess, it's getting a change of scenery. Maybe New York isn't that spot. You really don't want to have a guy who's in Detroit, which nobody watched before unless the last month of the year, and you're going to be bringing in a guy who, again, is not proven anything, and this is the change of scenery. I think it would be a softer landing spot for him in his career to go elsewhere. But again, if this is a guy that Stearns sees something in, because, again, there was nothing. It was just, randomly now the Mets are interested in Regazzo, who's actual, guy we trust compared to some stupid guys on the internet. Like, this is a reputable source saying, like, the Mets have some interest. I would put a little more appeal to it because, again, Stearns has said outright kind of, this is something maybe I like.
Yeah, possibly. And, Frank, I'll swing it over to you because I think that there is a little bit of concern if you plug Torque in here because he has not really proven much, and it's been a rough go for him since he was called up to the major leagues after being the number 1 overall pick. I think the upside is definitely there. But the thought of it, the thought of it is like, replacing the Pete Alonso production, like I said, with Juan Soto. And now all you just need to do is bring in a bat that either has upside or could be a convincing piece at first base to move Mark Vientos back to third, take Beatty out of the equation. Would this be something that you consider? Would you go into other outlets? Because, I mean, for me, this wouldn't be the number one here, but I understand if they want to do something like this.
I feel like with this point in the off season, as many guys are off the board, like we said, the options are getting a little limited, and it's not every day that a number one draft pick becomes available. Like that was a guy that was number one pick in like the last 4 to 5 years. Like maybe a guy that was number one pick like a decade ago. Like sure, that guy becomes available, but not one like from 4 to 5 years ago. Now, yes, pandemic, things like that, whatever. But I feel like that's just not something that happens very often. And I'd rather take a shot on a guy that's 25 compared to a guy that's 35. So I feel like we talk about upside, there's much more there. And you know what? He's not going to become the number one draft pick if you get him. But man, like we said, I feel like of the guys that we are out there, he has probably the best chance to be, like we're talking, again, league average. Because we said, okay, Soto replaces Pete in the lineup, but just give me another complimentary bat. And Torkelson, he has the ability to provide that. He has the potential to provide that. And I would rather take a shot on Torkelson than I would Beatty. I mean, that's definitely, that just makes a ton of sense. Now, giving up Blade, don't love it, but Blade's not a guarantee either. I mean, he's had, I made my videos past week, like he's had his good moments, his bad moments. So it's risky, and especially when we talk about starting pitching, like that's not, like I don't love trading starting pitchers if I'm not getting a guarantee back. But I feel like with the reality of the situation, like Andrew said, the potential with the team control, that's a big thing like we always talk about, is that if you could find those really talented players with team control at a low number, it goes a long way when you already have a huge payroll, so that it allows you to do a lot of other things. So if they're able to pull that off and he's solid, it could be a huge win. So it's like medium risk, high reward, or you know what I mean? It's like, it's one of those kind of things. Like it's not low risk, but it's also not high risk either. It's like kind of medium risk and with a potential of a really high reward.
Yeah, I think that there's a look as to, giving leeway to the young guys, of course. But when it comes to looking at it from the Spencer Torkelson type of thing, or whether there's somebody else out there that they make a trade for that has upside and can remain flexible, has control. When it comes to that, if you're fully moving on from Alonso, you're trying to build a little bit of a bridge to Ryan Clifford. That's what you're looking at. Because again, yes, we have Ryan Clifford. He's not in the equation right now. Ryan Clifford still needs to play like maybe another year, maybe another half year. He's still young. He still has things that he needs to work on. There's power there. There's upside, of course, but he ain't ready yet. Even though I do think that he could be a valuable piece maybe down the line, right now you're trying to fill in that gap right now. And bringing in these guys who either have upside, they are major league players. Clifford's not a major league player yet. But when it comes to the overall look of, maybe you look at the rest of this market, the main guy that I would target in this scenario, trading for a first baseman. I think there's other guys out there, maybe there's no name attached to it, but you also have it as 1 year of control. And then in free agency, you can take a shot at Vlad Jr. because it doesn't seem he's going to sign a contract at any time soon. Ryan Mountcastle is someone that I would consider. Another guy that you can look at, maybe Yandy Diaz. He's on the older side, though. I wouldn't go in there. Tristan Seahas has been talked about in shut up.
Who? What did you do?
What?
What's his name?
Tristan Sayas? Who gives a shit? Anyways, what? What's
Casas.
his
It's Casas.
Whatever.
Not whatever the hell you said. It's like, who?
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, like you haven't pronounced anybody wrong. Anyways, when it comes to the look of it, there's guys who have control, guys who could possibly be rentals. Blade Tidwell, if that's the guy that you need to bring up, you need to get rid of. I understand the need for pitching in this organization. I get it. But there's also the thought of this. Yes, you have Juan Soto here, and you would like to fill in parts of your roster and remain flexible. The problem here is I am willing to give up anyone that Brodie Van Wegenen or Billy Epler drafted, because I don't trust those guys at all. And I'm saying this straightforward. And yes, Brandon Sproat is one of those guys that Billy Epler drafted, who I believe they should try to keep. That's the one exception there. But Jet Williams, I'm not high on. Luis Angel Acuna, you don't know where he fits into that conversation because Jeff McNeil's going to be here for the next 7 years. So, again, there's guys out there that like are attached to our other general managers where I'm like, okay, you know what? I want Stearns to build his own farm. I want him to grow his own crops, right? And again, I'm not saying that all these guys are just bad or whatever. Tong and McLean. I'm just saying, like, yeah, there are some good pieces there. I'm just saying that if it's somebody that David Stearns did not draft, did not bring in, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. I really wouldn't. And I understand it's like, okay, whatever. But like the track record of these two guys that we have had before, Brodie Van Wegenen being attached to Brett Beatty. I mean, what has Brett Beatty done? Brett Beatty's been a complete disappointment in the first round. Kevin Parada barely even exists anymore. Jet Williams keeps getting hurt. I mean, there are guys that they pick that I feel like are good upside or whatever. But if you are trading anyone that you didn't bring in here, I understand it. I get it. You know, I understand if they were willing to do that. And I'm not saying that all of these prospects stink. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I understand if he didn't bring somebody in because, again, the talent evaluation of Brodie Van Wegenen and Billy Epler, I mean, there's a reason why those two do not have jobs in Major League Baseball anymore. So again, and that's just putting a label on things. You never know. But again, anyone that they drafted, that's fine. Fine. Get rid of them. That's fine. If it takes bringing in this stopgap, sure. I don't think it's going to take that much. But I will say that it's going to be, you know, Beatty for Torkelson probably would not be the ideal. It probably will end up being a pitching prospect. Maybe it becomes somebody who's major league ready or close to major league ready because the Tigers are trying to allocate assets right now. Who knows if that happens? I'd say realistically, it would be one player from the Mets top 10. If I were to make a guess, that would get you Torkelson. And when I look at the Mets prospects top 10, roughly, again, who knows if Pipeline knows what it's talking about or not. But we're looking at the Mets top 10. Not all 10 of them are untouchable to me. Like, I am willing to not lose sleep in that regard. The only guy that I would be upset of losing would be Brandon Sproat, who was one of my favorites when he was even in college before he was even drafted by the Mets the first time. So that's the one that would probably hurt. Everybody else, oh well, casualty is casualty. I don't know what to say. I'm okay with it. I am okay with it. Now, again, would I prefer somebody like Mountcastle? Yes, I would, but we don't know if he's going to be made available. Maybe he does be made available because he is in a contract year. So you never know. In regards to, somebody like Mountcastle or Yandy Diaz, or looking at that on the trade market. Andrew, I will go to you on that one. But again, when it comes to the look at this, do you think that this trade market is probably the best way to go and is probably the best way to look flexible, whether it is Torkelson or whether it is, Mountcastle, whether it is Diaz? Because again, you're not replacing Alonso. You already replaced Alonso's production. Ken, come to us. We already replaced him with Juan Soto, who's even better than Pete Alonso. He's a better hitter than Pete Alonso. You already replaced that production. You're not replacing Alonso. You're filling in first base. So from that standpoint, Andrew, Mountcastle, possibility, probably, I don't know if it's less likely. I don't know. Contract year, never know.
Yeah, Mounty's weird because, again, they would like to free Kobe Mayo. I don't know how much more Kobe Mayo needs to be down in AAA, just hitting 400-foot, 450-foot nukes. Obviously, again, he had a small sample, and he struck out so damn much, and everyone wants to throw him off the bridge. But obviously, they have O'Hearn there, so that would be the platoon, is they'd like to get Mayo. And just a weird offseason for Baltimore. You would think, they have that young core. How about go spend at the top of the market? You lose Corbin Burns, and your replacements are Sugano, who's like 90 years old, and a guy, Charlie Morton, who's like 350. So they've had a weird offseason. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to move Mountcastle. Again, we heard some rumors about Mullins, and then that kind of went nowhere. So I do think Mike Elias would listen. Again, you're playing at their mate. Well, again, anyone smart would be looking at you as, hey, I'm not saying you're desperate, but you're looking for a fill of a need, so maybe you could be taken advantage of. I don't think David Stearns would be, but I would think Mike Elias is probably going to look for, hey, I want a pretty decent haul because, again, I'm playing from the strength where I know you guys don't have a first baseman. But I think, obviously, Yandy, the Rays, that seemed to be poo-pooed, but I think it was Martino or one of them kind of poo-pooed that idea. And he's also older, so again, if I'm trying to find a first baseman, I'd rather go with the younger upside if it's Torque or Nolan Gorman. But, that's a different discussion. But again, if you're looking for, again, a league average or above average first baseman, Ryan Mountcastle hits that perfectly. And again, I do think he'd be available, but I think that maybe is a deadline thing where, again, let's say they're going to go into opening day with the O'Hearn and Mountcastle platoon. Kobe Mayo goes the first 2 months of April and May, hitting 415 homers in AAA, and they're going to be at no point of they have to get him up here. And then I think maybe you see kind of an Arise type when Arise got moved last year, maybe a mid-May, beginning of June type deal. I don't think they're going to move him, but again, I wouldn't put it past, especially how baseball free agency is moving so damn slow. We'll see. But I think he could be available. I just think that maybe is more of a deadline than it is now.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. And again, like I said, addressing this type of thing at the deadline could be something that they do. Maybe, Beatty is in the opening day lineup. You never know. But, when you look at it from, this perspective that for some reason doesn't seem to get it, Ken saying 37 RBIs is a winner. Okay, let's play this game. All right, 37 RBIs. All right. That's about, I don't know, 25 more runs batted in than Pete Alonso had in high leverage last year. Again, like when you're talking about it from upside, something that he could possibly do. And this isn't replacing him. This isn't replacing Alonso. Like we said, we already replaced Alonso. His production was replaced by one of the best hitters of this generation, possibly one of the best hitters to ever play this game in Juan Soto. You don't believe that? I don't know what to tell you. Now, one thing that is true, Darren Rivera saying, we have almost 100 people watching on the YouTube. Hit the like button. That'd be greatly appreciated. There's 30 likes, so we need about 62 more to get there. But, you just never know. Lamont Wade, I don't think that's going to be, I don't think that happens. But again, you never know. Upside. Yes, upside. something that is upside. Yep, he's 25 years old, and as scouted, he had a 60 hit tool and a 70 power tool. Because you already don't need to replace Alonso right now. You don't have to replace him. You just have to fill in first base. Two different things. Anyways, anything else that we can look at here? I'll flip it over to Frank. If you want to add anything before I go to you, I will actually bring in the poll that we have here in the chat. For those of you who have not voted on it yet, let us know. 26% of you would target Mountcastle. 18% of you would target Yandy Diaz. 26% of you would also target Spencer Torkelson. 30% of you would go other, which I'm going to guess most of that other is throw $500 million at Pete Alonso, which is not going to happen. But anyways, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, of course. But, you know, we're here to persuade. We're here to analyze. Frank, if there's anything that you want to add in regards to this, because I do want to talk about something else that came up. I'm sure you guys see it in the top right there, which it'll probably light the entire forest on fire, to be honest, even more than it already is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one guy, when it comes to, like, we talked about with trades, it really takes two to tango. So, like, there needs to be things from both sides. Like, both teams have to want to make a deal. And I will say that when it comes to Yandy Diaz, Tampa's always willing to make a deal when it comes to a trade. I mean, especially with Yandy, you know, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So it's like they want to get something for him because, you know, I mean, what else are they going to do? So, like, he is someone that I definitely feel will be traded at some point, whether that's this offseason or towards the deadline. He will get moved at some point. And he's someone that, like, with his skill set, I feel like it could fit this team. So it's someone that I think is actually realistic to get moved. It's like Torkelson, we're talking about, like, maybe he's moved. Mountcastle, it's a maybe. But with Yandy, I think it's much closer to a definite that he actually gets moved.
I mean, we'll see. I don't know what this market is going to look like because, again, it is late. It's again, you never know. But we'll see what happens in that regard. One more time, you know, Ken, if you want to talk about upside with RBIs, let's use RBIs with upside. All right. Pete Alonso, 2022, 131. Pete Alonso, 2023, 118. Pete Alonso, 2024, 88. So the alternative is a guy on the downswing in producing runs. But that doesn't matter, right? Because he's Pete, right? He's lovable. He's cuddly. He's a polar bear. He won 2 home run derbies. All right. So speaking of reunions that may or may not happen, who knows? Okay. Speaking of Pat Ragazzo's been on fire this week. Let's just say that. He did have a report that came out that the Mets were in attendance for, you know, sessions or throwing sessions in regards to Max Scherzer. Now, we also got a follow-up report that the Mets do have some interest in possibly bringing him back on a 1-year deal. I don't have really a graphic for this one. I'm not going to pop up anything at all. Here's the thing. As for the look of it, if people are talking about the fact that they need an ace, they need a frontline guy, Max Scherzer probably, that name probably fits in there. I listen, I don't know where to even go with this, to be honest. But when it comes to Alonso, or it comes to Max Scherzer, we know that the Blue Jays have been in that market as well. So that's another connection there. Andrew, I'm going to go to you here. I'll let you just open it up. You know, just open it up here. Say what you need to say in regards to Max Scherzer on a 1-year deal. Because we've talked about it, and there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. Given the circumstance there is some that has to be said. Let's just say that. Andrew?
I mean, shit, we can get Luis Angel Acuna back and get Max Scherzer back. Let's fucking do it. We win the trade, baby. All right. Back to reality. What the actual blue hell is this for? I mean, I can understand depth, and again, there's never a bad one-year deal. Yeah, there is when you're signing a geriatric, two-eyed colored guy who bitched and moaned that, oh, this team is going the wrong way, and they got to talk to me because they're going into a rebuild. And then that year that he was saying they're going to be real, but they go to the National League Championship Series, win more games against the Dodgers than so-called Big Brother, and didn't end up doing, maybe the worst defensive inning in professional sports. And then he would come back after there's structure and there's a presence finally set up at the top, and we want him back? If you didn't want us at our low when we were at the bar, we were a 3. I sure as hell don't want you when we're at least a 7 to 8 now. I ain't calling us a 10 yet because we ain't got no damn ring yet. Again, you ain't get no 10s until it's in jewelry. So you're an 8. Hell no. And especially if we're just talking about depth, give me the Heen Dog. Give me Jose Urena. He can throw at Ronald Acuna Jr.'s head. Why not? You know what? Cal Quantrill coming off a great year in Colorado. If I want a 91-mile-an-hour fastball, I'll take that. Brad Helen Keller, I'll take him. He sucked with the Royals. We can have him too. Why not? Jack Flaherty, fuck no. Who else on this list? Patrick Corbin. I'll take Patrick Corbin on a 1-year deal for like $800K. I bet he'll be more productive. Right. The point is, there are still 30-something pitchers available. If for a 1-year deal or league min, again, he ain't an ace. He ain't a 4. He's barely a 5 now. Let him go join JV in San Francisco and be like the fact I can understand at least making the phone call because there's no problem doing due diligence. But that can of worms has been opened. That can of worms has been spilled. You ain't putting them worms back in that can. Especially if you want to bring him back into this locker room where he seemed to finally have some stability. I'm not touching it, nor should you. Again, do your due diligence. Say, hey, you want a 1-year deal? Oh, you want $17 million? No, I'm good. We got Frankie Montas.
All right. Well, in terms of the market, in terms of his age, Frank, I'll go to you on this one. Justin Verlander got 1 year, $15 million from the Giants. Let's say if it's $16 million, right? Can't seem like a bad deal considering that's back-end money. But there's other things you got to look at in terms of what happened with Max Scherzer. And to be honest, I think it's kind of funny that like months after they finally shook him off the payroll, we're talking about this again, which I don't know. It was a laugh that I needed. I'm just saying this is the laugh I needed, but in logical sense, I mean, I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't see it happening, but like the thought of it, like why? I mean, I get why, but why, like that's there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot better things that you could do as a baseball club with $16 million than bring back Max Scherzer. I mean, Andrew made the great point of, like, he already caused issues with this team to begin with when he was on it. Before he even left, he was already causing issues. And, if Evan Longoria thought there was going to be clubhouse fights with the personalities that are in here, well, now you add one of the biggest personalities in a bad way that you could in Scherzer. And guess what, folks? Guess who Max Scherzer agent is? It is our good buddy Scott Boras that we've been talking about for months and months. So it's like, we're talking to you about Pete Alonso. It's not going well. We don't like each other. Oh, by the way, let's talk about Max Scherzer. So it's like, Max Scherzer doesn't like the Mets. The Mets don't like Scott Boras. So, like, in what way does this look like something where both people would be interested? So it seems very confusing. And to me, it's like if I said, okay, well, you could use $16 million to upgrade the team, and we're not talking about offense, about pitching, I'd rather go to the bullpen because we've talked about, like, there's still plenty of solid relievers that are out there. I'd rather go for instead of overpaying for a starter I know isn't very good. And Richard makes a great point here about Scherzer's durability. It won't last. He did not pitch in many games. He pitched in 9 games this past year. He's turning 41. I mean, this guy, he's really getting up there in age. I mean, like, and we talk about the differences from an Epler team to a Stearns team. No more 40-year-old pitchers. I mean, we were talking about, it's like, what if Stearns was here? Would he have signed this guy or that guy? I don't think he would have signed Scherzer to $42 million or whatever. I mean, maybe that was more of a Cohen thing or whatever. But, like, Stearns wouldn't do that. So I don't know why he would get him now, even if it is a one-year deal at a much lower cost. And Scherzer just hasn't really been that good. I mean, when he was last with the Mets, 4 ERA. This past year, 4 ERA. And you're turning 41. You're already having a bunch of injuries. You have, like, there's just so many things wrong with this that I just don't see it. I don't think he'd be good. I mean, even if he was good, like, I would still have some concerns. But the fact that I know he's not even good, I just don't see a reason for it.
This would be, in my opinion, in comparison, this would be the Mets after he left and went back to Atlanta. This would be the Mets bringing back Tom Glavine. This would be the exact same thing. And we all know that Max Scherzer had his Tom Glavine moments, okay? He had his Tom Glavine moment in Game 1. So Game 162, Glavine had it in Game 163, excuse me. Glavine had it in 162. So it was similar. Guy who was aging, veteran part of his career. I'm so done with Max Scherzer. I'm beyond done. We are moved past it. We've played an entire season since he was here. I wouldn't do it. If he does come back, and if it ends up happening, which I don't think is going to end up happening, but if he does end up coming back, you're probably not going to end up expecting much from him. And he's going to have to get used to as well, pitching in probably a 6-man rotation, which would probably be the best thing for him with his, declining age and advanced age. And, this is also a good thing about, I like Stearns coming here saying, everyone's forgetting about Blackburn. Yeah, Blackburn is there and could Scherzer be forgettable. A upgrade over Blackburn? Name-wise, yes. Name-wise, definitely. I think that I'd be willing to just kind of roll with Paul Blackburn and see what he's got fully healthy compared to a 40-year-old Max Scherzer who's not been healthy, and you'd have to commit even more money to. More money that you already have given him. You were paying him last year. Wasn't even pitching here. And again, this is what I mean. It's like, we need a first baseman. You want to call up Mark Canha? We need a third baseman. You want to call up Eduardo Escobar too? Starling Marte is still here. We can reunite the gang. Bring back Adam Ottavino. We need bullpen help, right? Chris Bassett, last year of his contract. You want to go trade for him? I mean, Omar Narvaez, is he available? At this point, I mean, it's just basically recycling old stuff. But I feel like there are Mets fans out there that are like, why do you hate this? It's Max Scherzer. Why do you hate this? I mean, it goes a little bit deeper in that sense because of what we gave him. We gave him $43 million a year. Nobody remember that? Carlos Carrasco. This is what I mean. Like, when it comes to the overall look of Max Scherzer, yes, probably at face value, it's fine. But when it comes to the overall of what happened here, it's like he was kind of the reason why we had to have this evaluation year. Even though it ended up working out, and now all of a sudden we're going to go back to this. We gave him $43 million a year. When we needed him to show up, it wasn't, remain flexible with Stearns. He has all of these options. No, he was the guy. That was it. He was the guy because that's how Epler builds his teams. Probably why he's not employed right now. Also, he was suspended for a year because he's an idiot. But when it comes to the look of Max Scherzer, when we needed him most, he crumbled. He crumbled. He didn't come through. And it's not the fact that, well, that's just one bad game. It was the game. It was the game. He didn't come through in that Braves series.
He didn't come through in the postseason either.
We wouldn't have had to play that San Diego series if he came through in that. You realize that in that Atlanta series, looking back. We also, in the game that we needed him to do well in, he gives up 7 runs to the Padres. Then, the next year, the drama continues. Pitches like absolute shit. Maybe he's banged up, maybe he's not. Sticky stuff. Betting his kid's life that he didn't have the sticky stuff. Giving us all this drama. But all he ends up being is a crybaby. That's it. He was just crying over and over again. And we didn't see that fierce competitor that Max Scherzer was. We saw a guy that was just a baby. That was it. A baby. No accountability as well. 19 starts. 23 homers given up. So again, I'm not saying that Max Scherzer would be an awful ad. But in terms of the context, why would you want to go back to that? For any reason, why would you want to go back to that? Nothing. No such thing as a bad one-year deal. No such thing. But this is the type of shift that you got from this, every man for himself in 2023. Lots of veterans. Maybe he's liked in that clubhouse. Maybe he is. I don't know. I'm not in that clubhouse or whatever. But the amount of drama that he caused here, amount of the position that they put them in, it was because of him. He was one of the main reasons as to why the team underperformed in 2023. I mean, there's a reason as to why he went up to the, did whatever he did publicly or whatever. And he was so shocked that they weren't loading up or anything. Anyways, when it comes to Max Scherzer, the main reason as to why they had to sell off, because we had, the front guys, Alonso and Nimmo and Lindor, they were producing. Our offense was okay. It wasn't bad. Wasn't as good as 2022. But the main reason as to why is because Max Scherzer didn't come through. He would cry when Mendoza pulls him after 6 earned runs of 2 innings. Probably would. He probably would end up doing that. I don't need that. Again, I just don't see it happening again. But you never know. I don't know. I would, if they end up signing him to a 1-year deal, there's nothing wrong with it. I would be skeptical of it because of his past behavior here. But I would be like, okay, you know what? Welcome back, Max. Welcome back. Let's see what you can do. But again, on a 1-year deal, there's probably going to be a tight leash there. We've seen Stearns is not afraid to DFA guys. Wouldn't it be sad if Max Scherzer comes back, pitches like shit, he gets DFA'd? That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? DFAing a first ballot Hall of Famer. Guess what? Stearns is not afraid to do that. He's not afraid to chest up to the possibility of Mets fans losing Pete Alonso. He's got his stance, whether you understand it or not. But I'm telling you, he's not afraid. He's not afraid to do it. So again, if it happens, it happens. But you never know. Anything you guys want to add, we'll get into some comments in the chat. I mean, it's just like at this point, I mean, what can you say? I mean, I think that, Stearns doesn't deserve a second chance with us. Send him to the retirement home. I agree. I would not do that. I mean,
we have openings.
Yeah, we do. You have openings?
Yeah, I do. I could get him in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, not bad. And you're not very far away from Citi Field, so if he wants to come back to New York, you're close. Because if he wants to come back to New York,
I mean, just because you're 90 hours away from Citi Field, damn, fucking couple hours, man, come on.
Oh, who knows? Anyways, I saw multiple people in the chat talking about Michael King because he was just made available as a possibility. We know that Dylan Cease has been in those trade rumors as well. Both of them are on 1 year, 1 year's left on their contract. I think it would be a great addition. I would not be opposed to it. I don't think it does. I don't think it happens. But it could be a possibility. I'd love to add somebody like Michael King. Personally, I think you probably would have to move someone of note that maybe you're not comfortable moving. Andrew, you're the trade guy. Michael King, great pitcher, right? Dylan Cease, of course. Never know.
I mean, it seems it's, again, the San Diego Padres implosion continues, and that's going to be the team that people are going to watch, not just for this deadline, the offseason. There might be a certain guy that, again, if this ownership shit show continues to go down, continue to just go down this lawsuits and horseshit situations, maybe there's a guy in a year from now that maybe he's interested in that play.
By the way, this week, just to interrupt there, we saw Jerickson Profar talk publicly about the situation with the Padres in his press conference after signing with the Braves, because Profar was attached to the Mets. So yeah, again, that could be something to look out for. Obviously Tatis is going to be a Met. That's basically just tells me that. Machado might be here as a DH option in his late 30s. You never know. But you continue.
Yeah, so again, that's a team that's not spending money and it's going to go back to what they kind of were before they became this random juggernaut in 2022 to now. So of course, weakening out the Dodgers, out west, to have a team that potentially could beat them and not have to, so we don't have to play them. Besides the point, King and Cease, again, them being rentals, it's going to cost you something. Don't get me wrong. Maybe do you take a bad deal? Again, there's the rumors of would you take on Cronenworth? No, I already have a shitty utility infielder I'm trying to get rid of. Some people brought up the other noodle. I'm not jumping at that, but it's an option. The one that I'm interested in is that then his name has been out there. Maybe you bundle him with a Robert Suarez because that's some more money coming off the books. Ooh. Now we're talking about potentially something sexy. You get a sexy reliever plus, an upper level. I won't call Michael King an ace, but a quality front.
Do we trade Jared Kelenic for him?
Jared Kelenic? I mean, yeah, that is, we got to give up all the top prospects. Jet Williams for Robert Suarez, but again, they're the team I'm watching, not just for this rest of this year, but again, what are they going to, if that, I'm not talking Bogart. I mean, like I said, maybe Tatis down the line. Again, we'll see if he's never been that guy again since he got popped with PEDs. It's almost like he never really was in the face of baseball.
Okay,
that's a different conversation. But I not saying that. He just said he's kind of above average now, not generations.
Should we start talking about the Rangers and the Penguins too? Like who gives a shit right now?
But yeah,
bro, just going right all off the bridge. I mean,
we got time. Kidding. But yeah, so again, like King and maybe add a Suarez, Wandy Peralta. They have a couple levies, and Matsui could potentially be if you want to add, finish up, your bullpen. That's also options. But again, I don't think the Mets are going to be. One, I think they're happy with their rotation. I think if it's an opportunistic and it's like you're getting them for nothing, I think that's a possibility. But I do think my worst fear is he's probably going to be hitting a lot of Brave.
It could happen. It really could happen because the Braves have been silent. Unless it was, Profar was like the first major move they made. I think before that, they got like Brian De La Cruz on a minor league deal. I mean, they have been silent. And to be honest, when you look at that team fully healthy, there's not really many gaps that you got to fill in. I'm going to tell you right now, we've talked about it before, even though we did end up getting in that house of horrors, the Braves are going to be back. The Braves are definitely going to be back. And this is also another thing you can consider. Michael King, what type of extension is he looking for? maybe that is something that you do consider trading for him because it's 1 year. The thing about Michael King is I think he's going to want to test free agency. And I don't think that they're going to be able to conclude something like that unless, he likes it. I mean, he was in New York before. He knows Carlos Mendoza, right? Also could be a good pairing. Let's not forget with a guy like, again, Desi, they brought in assistant pitching coach with something like that. That could be something that could be a really good fit. I like Michael King a lot. If you're talking about it from what he got last year, because last year was a career year for him, from dollar amount, it would be $31.3 million in AAV. Obviously, a little bit more of a outlier season because he keeps getting better every single year. It seems like that dollar amount continues to go up. I would say that after his stock has continued to go up, you're looking at similar to the Tyler Glasnow contract, which is 5 years, $136 million, which is what the Mets gave. I think that was like very close to what the Mets gave Jacob deGrom all these years ago with the years of control. But, that would be something maybe you do. Giving a pitcher 5 years is not something that I would be open to doing. I think he's going to test free agency either way. So if you do trade for him, you do trade for him. That's not particularly what I would do. I'd probably prefer to go the Luis Castillo route if you're looking at that because he has years of control.
And the same, I didn't realize he was 29. Like I looked, I'm like, I thought he was like still 26. I'm like, he's almost 30. I'm like, damn, what the fuck? I mean, we're getting old, I guess. I mean, it makes sense.
We'd also get the two main pieces in the Soto trade, so that would be fun. Yeah, that would be funny.
Yeah,
it would be funny, but you never know because in exchange there, we could be giving up the future superstar of this farm system, Jet Williams. And, you never know because they could turn the Soto trade into Jet Williams. That kid's Altuve, so you never know. Anyways.
Oh, boy.
As for some other comments in the chat, I do want to get into a few more. Frank came in here, not the Frank on the screen, but another Frank, saying, can we sign David Wright to play first base for a year? What is his projected WAR? I don't know. I have no clue. Is he still on? His contract's done, right? His contract's done.
Yeah, all the money he's been paid.
Yeah, he gave a lot of the money back too, right?
Yeah, good guy.
Pretty sure.
See, that's a guy that wanted to be the face of the franchise. He took less money to stay. He didn't want to test free agency.
And he stayed with the Mets when they were brutal. They were really bad.
Did you guys know that Brandon Nimmo, as a Boris client, took less money to not go out to the West Coast to come back to the Mets?
And he's the greatest homegrown Met of all time.
Fielder.
Yeah.
Soto's got $800 million.
Hey.
A fifth of Soto. Nemo's about a fifth of Soto, so that's about right.
Not bad. Okay.
The new outfielder market.
The new outfield, exactly. The new outfield market.
Yeah, the new. But, I think that there's other things that they can look at. Maybe there is third baseman out there that they maybe try to trade and move Vientos there. They need to get a corner infielder. That's what they have to look at. Somebody said earlier saying Francesa said that the Mets don't want Pete. That's a shame. That's a shame. I don't know what David Stearns is thinking. It must be the New York water.
Is that a Beningo or a Francesa? What the fuck are you trying to be there? That sounds more Beningo than does Francesa.
They both blend in. But I think that when you look at some of the other looks of the market, there is probably a trade they need to make. Who that will be, I don't know. We've heard Torkelson this week, which I would be okay with. Again, like we said, Mountcastle's another one. You never know. Guys, make sure to get in some of your questions as well in the chat. Let us know. In terms of questions, in terms of all of that stuff, we do have an announcement for next week. In regards to you guys being included in this show. So we'll make sure to stay tuned for that. But as for right now, we're just going to take some questions from the chat. And I think that, there's other comments here that I did want to get to. There was one that I forgot to star. Let's see. Yeah, right here. Boris works for Alonso. If Alonso had another other than rocks in his head, he would tell Boris what he wants and to make that happen. If Alonso wants to play for the Mets, it would have happened already. That's the thing. I feel like you're at a standstill of ego right now, whether it is Boris, whether it is Alonso, maybe even Stearns as well. I mean, there's a standoff here. And Alonso, like we said earlier, it's either he wants to play for the Mets. And again, the statement stands true. He's going to, end up being a Met, whether he likes it or not, because that's going to be the only option for him. And then he also wants the top dollar AAV. He should have played better in 2024. Is there anything that you guys want to add to that? Because I feel like we're spinning in circles with this one. And if not, we got Joey Meneses, right?
That is true. We do got Joey Baseball.
Yep. And he wasn't he in the Soto trade? No, he was like the corresponding move for Soto when they traded him or something like that. No. Darren Rivera coming in here saying, do you think the Mets are done with their bullpen? Nah. I think that there is one more guy that they do get of major league caliber. I don't know if it is, the high market or the low end market, a flyer guy, a situational guy, but you're also looking at it from the depth standpoint of they have a few starting options in that bullpen as well. They have depth from both sides. They have a lot of guys who can be in the bullpen, have experience as the bullpen pieces, and have experience as starters. And we're talking about, not just Tyler McGill. Griffin Canning is there in that formula. I think that David Peterson's definitely going to be in the opening day rotation. Yeah. Definitely. Jose Budo has started before. There's so many things, that can have them remain flexible. Maybe it opens a gateway to Brandon Sproat. You never know. Like they have put this into a place where they can switch things in and out. And we saw things being switched in and out in the pitching staff many, many times last year in 2024. Stearns made a lot of transactions. Lot of them. Anyways, bullpen, Andrew?
Yeah, our favorite, very tiny person on BNNY tonight just said that they are going to add. Pete Alonso is going to be the determining factor. It could be higher. If Alonso's gone, maybe it's a higher name. If Alonso's here, maybe a lower end. That's what, our favorite Andy Martino said today, about an hour ago. So, again, it all revolves, around the big revolving Michelin man himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, and Alonso, again, they're still holding this up. Still holding it up. Because I wouldn't blame him at any point. Would say, okay, Pete, bye.
It's literally going to be February this week. I mean, yeah, it's going to really be is dragging on quite a bit.
First day of February is my birthday. I'm going to be 23.
Wow.
We're going to have a standstill at 2 different ages. So, again, I don't know what to say anymore. He's holding up the bullpen now. He's held up the bullpen. He's held up the rotation. He's held up, not performing in 2024. That's what he held up on doing in 2024. And the Mets are making accommodations for their homegrown talent. You can't tell me they're lowballing him. Sorry. Frank, is there anything you want to add on the bullpen? Anything with that?
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to add in some capacity. I mean,
Yes.
and also it might not be like a marquee name. It could even be a bunch of minor league deals. Like I could definitely see them going like with more of a depth approach, which we know is probably the smarter bet when it comes to bullpen. Like unless there's like a marquee guy available, a lot of times they're just not worthy investments no matter the years. It's more so you have a better chance of getting a bunch of solid guys and hoping that one of them has like a big year than just going for the guy who had a good year last year and then nobody else. Because if there's an injury or just because you need so many bullpen arms in general and you don't want to overwork your guys who actually are good, because then it just leads to them not being good and getting hurt. Like it's just much better to have more guys available.
I mean, I think that it's more of a depth in that sense because you got to catch lightning in a bottle with relievers. You really do because they're just inconsistent. And you just never know in that regard, even with somebody like AJ Minter, who's going to be a key part to this bullpen. It's only a 2-year deal. It's 1+1. So again, you never know. And I think it's a $10 million thing. And then it's like some kind of like incentive thing for like the second year or something like that. And listen, I think that there's other guys out there that are high end level of talent out there that probably won't get signed for much because they're not even guys. So when Darren Rivera asks us here, you know, which higher end pieces in the bullpen would you go for? There's a guy named Kyle Finnegan still out there who, you know, has the frontline stuff there. He's available.
Estevez is still available.
Estevez is still available.
And also Martino brought the name because he didn't name any name, but he named one. I don't love it. It was Kenley Jansen. That's who he named.
Wow.
Kenley. Okay.
That's risky.
That's
okay.
I said it on BN
with the base running rules and everything. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
you gotta have your form of Ottavino some way.
You still got
you got to do that
out there. Stearns. And then you got guys like we've talked about in Middleton. Finnegan was DFA.
MLB.com still has Kirby Yates as a free agent, so I guess that Dodgers thing is not officially official, or
I thought they did it. Thought they tweeted it out. Whatever. Yeah, same time.
So I don't know about that one. That's kind of interesting because it looked like that was just about almost done.
Drew Smith's still out there, guys. Come on, we need to get a spring training invite.
Yes. I mean, you have other Hall of Famers like Craig Kimbrell. I mean, you would hope maybe Dylan Floro as like a bounce back. Like, there's still names like Brooks Raley as like a
Lucas Sims is
high
available.
Upside.
Another high
upside. Or even like the move the Mets made earlier this week. I mean, of like or last week getting like a 2-year deal for someone that was hurt and then hoping that second year. Like that's not necessarily a bullpen addition for this year, but next season he definitely could help out. Like, I could see them also looking at stuff like that too.
Yeah, Adbert Alzolay. Let me just say, when he is actually healthy, the man is nasty. He's a nasty arm. Hopefully he can regain that, form. And if he doesn't, it's a minor league deal. I mean, who knows? JD Rose saying, why is Eric Chavez still employed by this team?
Great question.
If we would probably further this conversation if we weren't running out of time here, because we probably can go on forever. But I'm just going to say vibes. He's here for vibes. And, we got to turn every hitter into Tony Gwynn, even though it's not possible because Tony Gwynn's dead. But, whatever. And our guy Ibby coming in saying Hill would make Carson happy. That's the beanie man. Let's get the beanie man with a smile. That'd be awesome.
We're not allowed to have him smile. No, that's not what's happening.
That would be awesome. I would love to get somebody like Tim Hill. And also it's more in the Stearns formula as well. It would not be a Stearns bullpen without one of those side slinging types of guys who can throw junk and kind of just screw things up in that way and kind of be a matchup guy. David Robertson is still out there. If you were to get David Robertson on 1 year, $3 million, 1 year, $4 million, something like that, I wouldn't mind it. He probably would get a little bit more. But you just never know. Would you like the Mets to trade for Helsley? I mean, if it includes Arenado, I think that that's a banged up job right there. But again, I think that Helsley's going to be on the free agent market. He's going to want to test. I would not trade assets for a reliever, especially 1 year of a reliever. Because even when Billy Epler was here, he traded for Brooks Raley, who had some team control as well. And, I think that, when it comes to Helsley, he's going to get a lot of money. He is going to get a lot of money on this market. And, if he does have a really good year, stays healthy, you're probably looking at, the Tanner Scott deal is going to look tiny because I'm pretty sure he's younger. Right?
He's 28.
Yeah, he's younger.
How old's Held Bells?
He's 30. Oh, never mind. He's 30.
Oh, he's 30. Okay.
He is 30.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is still like reliever prime again. But if he has a career year,
he's getting at least 4 years. So you're the same thing like Williams and those guys. 4-year deals.
Tim, that is not Jonah. Jonah Hill. Anyways,
anything else?
Darren Rivera saying who is that minor league infielder that they got with the high slugging percentage? The Mets? Are they talking about Joey Meneses? Maybe
Jacob Young, is that the other guy from Career or whatever? I'm just trying to think guys they've signed.
Yeah, that could be him too.
Osokar, or whatever the fuck his name is.
Stanek would be sensible and bring Raley in when he recovers. I would love to bring back Brooks Raley if that's what they're thinking of, like this second lefty in that pen behind Minter. I would be willing to go through a few months of Danny Young or something like that, or maybe it's Genesis Cabrera. Who knows? I don't know how you fill in that spot because they do have guys who can give you some long relief. We'll see how they can figure that. But I'd be willing to give something to Raley. It would not be much. But there's other things out there, and there's guys from minor league deals that maybe they break camp with you and they bring up and could be solid pieces to this bullpen, because this bullpen is not going to be what it is after game 162. I can tell you that right now. Because there was two relievers from the opening day roster that were on the team at game 162. One of them was a body. One of them is a guy that just existed in Adam Ottavino, who was diminished to the lowest of leverage roles. You had Edwin Diaz here. Edwin Diaz, in which you expect because he's, making a lot of money for a reliever. So again, I think that there's another way that you can look at it as to where maybe the Mets just build up the depth. Guys like Tim Hill, maybe there's Stanek in there. We did see attached to the Mets. Maybe they've, I don't know, in regards to a guy like Starling Marte. Is Hunter Harvey still on the table? I don't know. I mean, maybe I have no clue.
Again,
there is
some guys out there. Could you buy low on a Camilo Duval? I mean, there's guys out there you can go get.
There is.
It's the reliever market.
Yeah, you never know. You can always pull things out of a hat. You don't just need to go full on. Let's bring in all of these closers that were good, have a good track record. I think that there's some flexibility out there when it comes to the upside of what they looked at last year. Guys like Jorge Lopez, we knew that there was upside there. The reason why he's not here, it was a different reason, because he actually was pitching fairly well for us before he left, and he ended up pitching pretty good for the Cubs afterwards. But what he did was unacceptable. They couldn't do stuff. They couldn't do things like that. The only guy that I really questioned was bringing back Adam Ottavino. So hopefully that doesn't happen again, and I'll be fine. I would be okay with that. These names, these washed up names or older names Martino likes to just spew out there. You never know. But we'll see in regards to that. So I think we're going to wrap up things here. The drama continues with Pete Alonso, and we're here for the ride, I guess, until we get a resolution in some way. We'll be live for any major league moves that they usually make. Andrew, I'll go to you in your last words of today's episode. It's 112. 112, man. We're getting up there.
I mean, we're almost a fifth of the way to Frank's age. But again, we are, like we said, on Saturday. Next time that there's a podcast, we're in February. And
Yes.
we'll just end. And there's one more thing. I think February 13th, or I think it's Valentine's Day, is a day that, a certain player set a deadline. So if nothing happens before those days, maybe some chaos ensues. I'll end it with that.
Yeah. By the way, he is talking about Michael Conforto. That's the player. Frank?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is quite a note to finish on, quite another former name to bring up. I mean, it's been a lot of similarities, though. I mean, Pete Alonso and Michael, I mean, they've had quite a bit of similarities with how their free agent process has gone and kind of playing themselves out of really good deals that the Mets offered. So, I mean, you don't want history to repeat itself, but that's the way it's going. So, like we said, it's just a matter of replacing a little more offense production. We wouldn't mind it, but like we said, they definitely could use some more help in the bullpen. So, I mean, that's definitely what I would like to see too. But, I mean, that's just kind of where they're at right now. But there's more work to be done. They're running a little low on time, though. Because, like we said, by next time we do this, it is going to be February. And you're like a week or two away from pitchers and catchers reporting. So, I always say, ideally, you want to go in with the team, like, into spring training that you're going to use. But like we saw, JD Martinez get signed really late. And with the way this free agency is going, like, Bregman's still out there, not for the Mets, but just for anybody. So it's not like just the Pete Alonso thing. Like, we talk about how many relievers are available. Like, there's still starters available. A lot of things need to get done before spring training for a bunch of teams.
Yeah, definitely. But we are getting closer and closer. And to spring training, we get to see baseball again, whether we see Pete Alonso or not. The saga will continue. I'm sure we'll get reports. We'll talk about it. And that's going to be that. And hopefully the drama doesn't become more drama the next week. But, never mind. It could continue to top. But who knows? Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications to know when we go live on our YouTube channel. Also on X, you can follow us on X as well. And of course, the audio that goes out at 9 a.m. the following day, that these are recorded live at 7 o'clock on Monday. Stay tuned for a big announcement for next week. We'll most likely have that here at the beginning of our show. We will announce it, and then it will elevate to something else. You guys will understand what we mean by then, so stay tuned for that. It should be pretty exciting. And as for all of us individually, make sure to follow us. Links are in the description, as always. Follow us on X, follow us on TikTok. And of course, no matter how crazy it gets, no matter how players come and go, it's always Let's Go Mets. And we will see you guys next time.